The silver ships of the Galactic Concord appeared in Earth's sky without warning. They hovered over major cities, their smooth hulls reflecting sunlight like mirrors. After 3 days of silence that sent the world into panic, they finally made contact. Colonel Jae-ho Park stood at attention as the alien delegation entered the Korean War Memorial Museum. After 30 years of military service, he never imagined he would be the one showing aliens around human history. The museum had been cleared of visitors for this special tour. "Welcome to Earth," he said with a formal bow. "I'm honored to show you our military history." The lead alien, Teklo, was tall with blue skin that seemed to shimmer. His forearms moved in graceful patterns as he spoke through a translation device. "We are pleased to learn about your species' development." 5 other aliens followed behind him. They looked similar but with different colored markings on their faces. They walked with a strange gliding motion, as if gravity affected them less. Colonel Park led them through exhibits of swords, rifles, and eventually to the large open hall that housed the tanks. In the center sat the pride of the museum, a perfectly restored M1A2 Abrams tank. Its desert camouflage paint still looked fresh, its massive cannon pointed slightly upward. "This was one of our most advanced ground combat vehicles," Park explained, patting the tank's solid metal side. "The Abrams served for over 50 years. This one fought in several conflicts." Teklo moved closer, his head tilting in what seemed like curiosity. Then his mouth parts clicked together rapidly. The other aliens made similar sounds. "They're laughing," whispered Misun, the translator who stood beside Park. Teklo ran one of his 4 hands along the tank's treads. "You moved across land on these metal belts? And you protected yourselves with this metal shell?" "Yes," Park said, feeling strangely defensive. "The armor could withstand most weapons of its time." Another alien spoke up. "How did it attack? By running into things?" Park pointed to the main cannon. "It fired projectiles that could hit targets several kilometers away with great accuracy." This caused more clicking laughter. Teklo's translator conveyed his words, "Physical projectiles? How quaint. We haven't used such primitive methods in over 2,000 years." Colonel Park felt his face grow warm. The Abrams had been the pride of armies, a symbol of power that had made enemies tremble. Now aliens were treating it like a child's toy. "This primitive machine was extremely effective," Park said firmly. "It changed the course of several conflicts." Of course," Teklo said, waving his upper arms dismissively. "All species go through these developmental stages. We find it charming." The aliens moved on to other exhibits, but Park stayed behind for a moment, looking at the tank. The museum staff had lovingly restored it to perfect condition. Its engine could still roar to life if needed. He placed his hand on its cool metal surface and sighed. Later that day, in a meeting room at the United Nations, the aliens revealed the real reason for their visit. Colorful holograms floated in the air, showing star maps and what appeared to be battle scenes. "We face a grave threat," Teklo explained to the assembled world leaders. "A species called the Vorkai has been conquering worlds at the edge of our territory. They are brutal and efficient. We seek allies in this conflict." "And you came to Earth?" asked President Tae-woo of South Korea. "We have been observing your world for some time," Teklo said. "Your species has potential, despite your technological limitations." "What exactly do you mean by limitations?" asked the American president. One of the other aliens, named Rena, stepped forward. Her skin was a lighter blue with silver markings around her eyes. "Your energy technology is centuries behind ours. You still use fossil fuels and basic nuclear fission. Your weapons are mostly kinetic, firing physical objects or creating chemical explosions. Our ships use gravitic drives," Teklo added. "Our weapons are energy-based. Our shields can deflect anything that travels below light speed." Colonel Park, standing at the back of the room, listened with growing frustration. The aliens clearly viewed humans as primitive, barely worth their time. Yet they needed help against these Vorkai invaders. "If our technology is so limited," Park finally spoke up, "why come to us at all? Teklo turned all four of his eyes toward the colonel. Numbers, he said simply. The Vorkai are coming this way regardless. We would rather have you as prepared allies than conquered subjects. A chill went through the room. Park thought back to the tank in the museum, and how the aliens had laughed at it. He wondered if they were making a grave mistake by underestimating human ingenuity. Retry the emergency meeting room deep beneath Seoul felt too small for the 15 people gathered there. World leaders and military commanders sat around the oval table, their faces lit by the blue glow of the alien hologram floating above them. Commander Rena stood beside the hologram, her silver facial markings catching the light as she moved. The Vorkai fleet has increased speed, she said, pointing to red dots moving through a star map. Our latest calculations show they will reach your solar system in 14 days, not 30 as we first thought. Colonel J-Ho Park felt his stomach tighten. 2 weeks was nothing. Earth's militaries could barely organize joint training exercises in that time, let alone prepare for an alien invasion. How many ships? Asked General Han, the Korean Joint Chiefs commander. 47 war vessels and approximately 200 support craft, Rena replied. Her voice remained calm, as if discussing the weather instead of humanity's potential extinction. Defense Minister Subin leaned forward, her normally composed face showing rare concern. What about our orbital defenses? The satellite network we've been building with your technology will fail, Rena interrupted. She waved one of her four hands, and the hologram changed to show a battle scene. Blue ships fired bright beams at red ships, but the beams seemed to bend away before hitting their targets. The Vorkai have developed countermeasures for energy-based weapons. That's how we lost 3 star systems already. President Tae-woo looked older than he had just days ago. Then what do you suggest? Teklo stepped forward, towering over the humans. Evacuation of key personnel and knowledge. We can transport perhaps 10,000 of your people to safe worlds. Scientists, artists, genetic samples enough to preserve something of Earth. The room fell silent. 10,000 out of billions. It wasn't a rescue plan, it was collecting specimens before extinction. And military support, asked the American president. What role would our forces play? Teklo and Rena exchanged quick glances. Your military contribution would be minimal, Teklo said carefully. The Vorkai weapons are far beyond your capabilities. At the back of the room, Colonel Park felt anger building in his chest. He caught the eye of Chief Engineer Dae-hyun, who sat in the corner taking notes. They had known each other since military academy, and without words, Park could tell his friend was thinking the same thing. As the meeting continued, Park slipped away to stand beside Dae-hyun. They think we're helpless, he whispered. They might be right, Dae-hyun replied, but his eyes showed he didn't believe it. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Technology isn't everything, Park said. Remember what we learned in history class? The most advanced army doesn't always win. Dae-hyun nodded slowly. What are you thinking? Before Park could answer, an aide rushed into the room and whispered something to President Tae-woo. The president's face turned pale. We just lost contact with our Mars colony, he announced. All communication systems went dark at once. Rena quickly adjusted her hologram. A red dot appeared near Mars. A scout ship, she said, her voice losing its calm for the first time. They're already in your system. The room erupted in panic. Military commanders shouted orders into phones. Politicians demanded evacuation plans. In the chaos, Colonel Park pulled Dae-hyun into a quiet corner. The museum, he said. Not just our tank but everything we have. Old fighters, artillery, even the ancient stuff. Dae-hyun looked confused. What good would museum pieces do against aliens? The Concorde ships are failing against the Vorkai because they use similar technology. Both sides understand each other's weapons. Park's eyes lit up with the idea forming in his mind. But what if we use something completely different? Something they haven't seen for thousands of years? Dae-hyun's eyes widened as he understood. Physical projectiles. Kinetic energy weapons. Basic explosives. Exactly, Park nodded. If their defenses are designed to stop energy weapons, maybe they can't stop a simple metal bullet. Or a tank shell. That's. Daehyun began with doubt, then his expression changed. That's actually brilliant. It's so primitive it might work. They looked back at the meeting table, where the aliens were explaining complex evacuation procedures. Teklo was speaking about acceptable losses and preservation of cultural samples as if humans were already museum exhibits themselves. We need to talk to General Han, Park said. And we need access to every military museum in the country. They'll think we're crazy, Daehyun warned. Park watched as Teklo condescendingly patted President Taewoo's shoulder with one of his 4 hands. Maybe, he said. But I'd rather try something crazy than wait to be collected as a specimen. Outside the reinforced windows of the bunker, the sky had grown darker. Somewhere beyond Earth's atmosphere, an enemy was coming, an enemy that thought it understood everything about warfare. Colonel Park hoped they were about to learn that humans were full of surprises, and that sometimes old ways had advantages that new technology had forgotten. The first battle against the Vorkai ended quickly and badly. The Concorde's elegant ships fell from the sky like broken birds, their engines disabled by strange pulse technology. Their energy weapons sparked and fizzled uselessly against the invaders' shields. Within 3 hours, the alien forces had established a landing zone in the plains north of Busan. Colonel Park watched the disaster unfold on the screens in the underground command center. The bunker, built during the Cold War and recently modernized, now served as humanity's last hope. Military leaders from a dozen nations stood in shocked silence as reports of the Concorde's defeat came in. Their entire fleet is disabled, General Han announced, his voice tight. The Vorkai are deploying ground forces. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing Teklo. The once proud alien commander looked shaken, blue blood seeping from a cut on his face. We underestimated them, he admitted. The Vorkai have developed new countermeasures. Our ship's systems are failing. What about your famous energy weapons? Park asked. The ones that made our technology look primitive? Teklo's forearms dropped in what seemed like shame. Useless. Their shields adapt to any energy signature we use. Park exchanged looks with Daehyun, who nodded slightly. It was time. We have an alternative, Park said, stepping forward. He pressed a button, and the central display changed to show images of the Korean War Memorial Museum. Workers were busy removing vehicles from exhibits. Tanks, howitzers, and old fighter jets were being loaded onto transport trucks. What is this? Commander Rina asked, entering the bunker with several injured Concorde officers. Plan B, Park replied. Or maybe Plan Ancient. He explained the idea quickly. If the Vorkai had developed defenses against energy weapons, perhaps they would have no defense against old-fashioned kinetic weapons, bullets, shells, and bombs. You can't be serious, Teklo said, mandibles clicking in what humans now recognized as disbelief. Those museum pieces? Against a Vorkai battle group? Do you have a better idea? Park challenged. Silence answered him. For the next 3 days, while the Vorkai consolidated their position, a desperate operation unfolded across South Korea. Museum pieces were transported to military bases. Retired mechanics and weapons specialists were called back to duty. Artillery shells and ammunition were pulled from storage. In a hangar at Ozan Air Base, Colonel Park ran his hand along the newly painted side of the Abrams tank. The museum piece had been upgraded with whatever modern technology could be quickly adapted. The crew compartment was reinforced. The targeting systems were replaced with current models. But at its heart, it remained what it had always been, a machine designed to deliver devastating kinetic force. Will it work? President Taewoo asked, visiting the preparations. I don't know, Park admitted. But I know this, that tank was built to fight. It's been waiting in that museum for a chance to roar again. Daehyun approached with a tablet showing engine diagnostics. We've restored 23 tanks, 47 artillery pieces, and 15 A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft. A-10s? Park asked, surprised. I thought those were all scrapped decades ago. The Americans kept some in deep storage, Daehyun explained with a small smile. They're bringing them over now, along with something they call BRRRT ammunition. Across the hangar, Teklo and Rena watched the humans work. Their initial skepticism had turned to curiosity as the restoration progressed. These machines are so physical, Rena observed. So mechanical. That's the point, Park said, overhearing her. No computer systems for their pulse weapons to disable. No energy signatures to detect. Just metal, explosives, and human determination. That evening, intelligence reports showed the Vorkai were preparing to move south toward Busan. Their forces included hovering vehicles and troops in armor that seemed to shimmer with energy fields. In the command center, Colonel Park addressed the Joint Human Concord Force. Engineers, mechanics, and soldiers stood side by side with the alien allies who had so recently mocked their technology. The enemy expects us to use modern weapons, Park said, his voice steady despite his fear. They expect energy beams and guided missiles. They're ready for those. What they're not ready for is the past coming back to fight them. He pulled up an image of the tank battalion, now painted in dark earth tones with the name Relic Force stenciled on their sides. Sometimes, he said, looking directly at Teklo, old solutions solve new problems. The alien commander studied the human faces around him, determined, afraid, but not defeated. He finally nodded. Very well, Colonel. Let's see what your relics can do. As dawn approached, the rumble of diesel engines echoed across the countryside. Tanks that had been silent museum pieces for decades moved into position. Inside the lead tank, officially designated Relic 1, Colonel Park checked his crew. Ready to make history, he asked. His gunner, a young sergeant named Minho, patted the controls of the 120mm cannon. Ready to remind these aliens why humans survived on Earth for so long. Park smiled grimly as he gave the order, Relic Force, advance. The sky burned red over the rice fields outside Busan as the sun began to rise. Morning mist clung to the ground, creating an eerie landscape. In the distance, the shapes of alien machines moved slowly forward. The Vorkai ground forces had begun their advance toward the city. Mektar, commander of the Vorkai invasion force, stood on a small hill overlooking the battlefield. His gray skin was covered in ceremonial war paint, and his 6 eyes scanned the terrain with confident ease. This world would fall like all the others. Status report, he ordered his lieutenant. Excellent, Commander, the lieutenant replied. We've detected some primitive human defenses ahead, but nothing concerning. Their flying machines attempted an attack but fell from the sky when our pulse generators activated. Mektar watched with satisfaction as several human jets crashed in the distance, their electronics fried by Vorkai technology. The same fate had befallen the Concorde's hovering vehicles, which now lay useless across the battlefield. Another easy conquest, he told his officers. These humans are even less advanced than we expected. Behind the Vorkai lines, thousands of troops and vehicles prepared for the final push. Their energy shields shimmered in the morning light, creating a beautiful but deadly display of power. Colonel Park and his crew waited in Relic 1, hidden in a copse of trees. Through his periscope, he could see the alien force advancing. Their vehicles didn't touch the ground but hovered several feet above it, leaving no tracks. Their weapons glowed with strange energy. Remember, Park told his crew, we don't know if this will work. But if it does, we hit them hard and fast before they can adapt. Sergeant Minho adjusted the targeting system for the main cannon. Range to lead vehicle, 2,400 meters. Load armor piercing, Park ordered. The loader, Corporal Jinwoo, slammed a massive depleted uranium shell into the breech and locked it. Ready! Park took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Either their crazy plan would work, or they'd be destroyed before firing a second shot. He pressed the radio button. All Relic units, prepare to engage on my mark. 23 restored tanks waited in hidden positions along the tree line. Behind them, artillery crews stood by their howitzers. It was an army from the past, facing an enemy from another world. 3, 2, 1. Fire! The Abrams tank roared to life. Its massive cannon recoiled as it sent a depleted uranium round screaming toward the Vorkai front line. The sound was deafening, nothing like the quiet hum of modern energy weapons. It was raw, physical power. Mektar heard the strange explosion and turned just in time to see his lead vehicle erupt in flames. The round had torn through its energy shield as if it wasn't there and punched directly through its hull. "Impossible," he shouted. "What weapon did that?" Before his officers could answer, 23 more explosions ripped through his front lines. Vorkai vehicles, supposedly protected by their advanced shields, burst into flames or simply fell apart as metal projectiles tore through them. On the human side, Park watched in amazement. "It's working! Their shields don't stop physical projectiles." He keyed his radio. "All units, advance and fire at will." The rumbling grew louder as the tanks emerged from their hiding places, treads grinding against the earth as they charged forward. Their cannons fired again and again, each shot finding a target. In the sky, the restored A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft appeared, their engines roaring as they dove toward the alien forces. The distinctive sound of their Gatling guns, the BRRRT that had made them famous, echoed across the battlefield as thousands of bullets rained down on the invaders. Mektar couldn't believe what he was seeing. His forces were being torn apart by primitive weapons. His shields, designed to stop energy beams and plasma, did nothing against these simple metal projectiles. "Adapt the shields," he ordered frantically. "Change the frequency." "We can't," his science officer replied, panic in his voice. "There's no energy signature to adapt to. They're just objects." Park stood up in his commander's hatch as Relic 1 crested a small hill. Through his binoculars, he could see confusion in the alien ranks. Vehicles were turning in circles, troops were running for cover, and their formation was breaking apart. "Target their command post," he ordered Minho. The gunner swung the turret toward the hill where Mektar stood. Target acquired. Fire! The tank shuddered as another round left the barrel. Seconds later, the Vorkai command post disappeared in a cloud of smoke and debris. As the tanks rolled forward, Park couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The museum piece, once laughed at by the Concord aliens, was now leading the charge against an enemy that had thought humanity helpless. From a hill several kilometers back, Teklo and Rena watched in astonishment as the human relics tore through the Vorkai lines. "How is this possible?" Rena asked, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Teklo shook his head slowly. "We were wrong about them. So very wrong." The battle wasn't over yet, but as Relic 1 fired again, sending another alien vehicle up in flames, the tide had clearly turned. The old tank, awakened from its museum slumber, was showing the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly. The battle lasted less than 3 hours. Where advanced alien weapons had failed, human relics turned the tide against the Vorkai forces. The tanks rolled forward in formation, their treads crushing the earth beneath them, their cannons firing shell after shell at the increasingly desperate aliens. From his observation post on a distant hill, Teklo watched through binoculars as the human tanks methodically destroyed the Vorkai position. Beside him, Commander Rena stood in stunned silence. "Impossible," Teklo whispered, lowering his binoculars. "They're winning with museum pieces." Rena adjusted her scanner, trying to understand what was happening. The Vorkai shields are calibrated to stop energy attacks. They have no defense against these physical objects. Below them, Colonel Park's tank Relic 1 led the charge through the center of the alien formation. Its main cannon fired, sending another Vorkai vehicle up in flames. Behind it, the other restored tanks spread out in a wide arc, trapping the invaders against the coastline. In the sky, old A-10 aircraft made strafing runs, their bullets tearing through alien armor. Artillery shells rained down from hidden positions in the hills. It was warfare as practiced for centuries on Earth, physical, brutal, and effective. They were prepared for energy weapons, not physical projectiles, Rena said, finally understanding. "We've been using the same basic technology for so long, we forgot there were other ways to fight." The Vorkai began a disorganized retreat toward their landing ships, abandoning equipment as they fled. Colonel Park stood in the commander's hatch of Relic 1, directing the final push. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes shone with fierce determination. "Cut off their escape route," he ordered over the radio. "Don't let them regroup." As the last Vorkai ship attempted to lift off, a barrage of artillery shells knocked it back to the ground, where it exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Cheers erupted across the human lines. When the dust settled, Colonel Park emerged from his tank. He walked slowly across the battlefield, surveying what they had accomplished. Bodies of Vorkai soldiers lay scattered among the wreckage of their advanced vehicles. Their technology, so superior in many ways, had been defeated by machines built decades or even centuries earlier. Teklo approached, his tall form moving carefully through the debris. "Colonel," he said, his voice humbled, "I owe you and your species an apology." Park looked up at the alien. "For what?" "For underestimating you. For laughing at your relics." Teklo gestured at the Abrams tank, now bearing battle scars across its hull. "We thought technology was everything. We forgot that warfare is about adaptation and surprise." Park nodded, too tired for anger. The old ways sometimes have advantages that new technology forgets. 6 months later, the war against the Vorkai had turned dramatically. Across 3 star systems, human tactics and primitive weapons had broken the invaders' advance. Earth had become not just a member of the Galactic Concord but a valued military ally. In the Grand Hall of the Concord Council, representatives from 50 alien species gathered to formally welcome humanity into their ranks. At the center of the hall, placed on a pedestal of honor, stood the Abrams tank Relic 1, its battle damage preserved as a testament to human ingenuity. Colonel Park, now General Park, stood beside it as Teklo addressed the assembly. "When we first came to Earth, we saw a species behind us in technological development," the alien commander admitted. "We failed to recognize their greatest strength, their adaptability. While we had been fighting the same way for millennia, humans had experienced countless different types of warfare. They remembered what we had forgotten." Teklo turned to face Park. "The humans have taught us all a valuable lesson: never assume that newer means better. Never forget the old ways. And never, ever underestimate a species that has survived its own violent history." After the ceremony, Park walked alone through the alien ship that would take him back to Earth. Through a viewport, he could see the stars that now held new meaning for humanity. They were no longer just distant lights but places where humans would go, not as primitives to be pitted, but as valued allies. His communicator beeped with a message from President Tae-woo. "Production of the new Relic-class vehicles begins next week. The Concorde wants 5,000. Park smiled. The old tank from the museum had changed humanity's future. Earth's factories were now producing updated versions of outdated weapons, kinetic weapons that could bypass energy shields, mechanical systems immune to electronic warfare, simple but effective tools of war. He thought back to that day in the museum, when Teklo had laughed at the Abrams tank. The aliens had called it primitive, a relic of a bygone era. They never expected it would roar back to life when needed most. As General Park looked out at the stars, he knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.